to
to
the
the
flag
flag
United
of
States,
the United States of America,
and to the
and to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
one
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 nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all. And no disrespect to the flag, but it's too difficult. It's hard to stand up, and we wouldn't see anybody. So, okay, so we got our roll call next.
Councilor Angelica Stetson,
Here.
Mayor Kaczynski,
Here.
Councilor Luddy,
Here.
Councilor Panessa,
Here.
Councilor Rosso,
Here.
Councilor Yornaga,
Here.
Councilor Veach.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, we're at our audience of citizens now. If anyone wishes to address the council, now would be your time on issues before us this evening, or other issues you wanted to bring up about the town. Anyone wish to speak? Second call, anyone wish to speak? Third call? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the audience of citizens, and we'll move on to our meeting agenda. Just, we will though tonight, with our, I think it's our last item, or second to last, with the, where's the police? Item, topic number 7, I told the police union, if they, whoever's on the call, on the meeting, they're welcome to talk during that time. But the audience of citizens is now closed, and we'll go on to our consent agenda. We have 7 topics: donations for the library, donations for the animal control, approved Berlin Volunteer Fire Department to sell food and beverage at their event in May 29th. Glad to see that coming back, hopefully. Berlin High School to sell beverages, entrance fee at their lineman challenge camp on July 10th at Sage. Donations of $485 to fund the police canine program. Accept the donation to the police peer support program, and authorize town manager to apply for the historic documents preservation grant in the amount of $5,500. Those are our 7 items on our consent agenda. If we have no comments on those, we will go ahead and take a motion.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Luddy here. I will make a motion to accept the 7 items on the consent agenda tonight.
Thank you. Second on that?
I second it, Councilor Panessa.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all is in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. New business.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. So the
Hi,
first item on the agenda pertains to the Berlin High School YMCA daycare program lease agreement and building modifications. What I would do at this point is I'll turn it over to Brian to give you an overview of what he intends to do. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you very much, Arosh. Brian Benigni, Superintendent of Schools.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me here tonight. We have what's called the Berlin Transition Academy. We've had it for 5 years, located off-site, and we've rented the back portion of the YMCA next to Webster Bank. And the Transition Academy is for students that they've already graduated from high school, but by law, we're required to educate them until they're 22 years old. It used to be 21, just was raised to 22. It's really a life skills education. And within that education, we're teaching them how to function within the community. There's a work study program. We have job coaches. They balance a bank account. They make their own lunches. They go to the grocery store and shop. So within that facility, and our range of students ranges from as little as 7 all the way up to 15 students. And, we used to have it at Berlin High School. And what happened is we had several parents that did not want their children at the high school once they graduated. They really wanted them off-site because they have graduated and they've spent their 4 years in the high school. That being the case, we started the Transition Academy at the Y. just to know that point that we are required by law to educate them for those additional years. So if a parent decides that they don't like or don't feel that it's appropriate education, what we're offering, they can opt to be educated elsewhere, and then we end up paying that fee. So that year we had, about 6 years ago, we had 2 students who did not want to be in the high school. We had to educate them elsewhere at a price 6 years ago of $120,000 just for that each year. So, the Tradition Academy has been great. We haven't had any students that don't want to be there, or parents that don't think it's a great environment for their children. That being the case, the thought is that the YMCA came to us and said they need to take their space back to run a daycare and a preschool. We have since expanded. We have 15 students. We're looking next year to add another 15 students with Cromwell, where they would be part of the program also in a joint effort. And Linda can speak more if you want further information. But so the thought was that the Y we have at the high school embedded into the curriculum, we have about over 25% of our students take a child development course, where we usually have, and some of your children might have been there, where we invite children into school for 2 hours, and they kind of act as, I'm going to say this in a nice way, the guinea pigs. They act as a daycare so the students can interact with them in a child care setting. We would utilize the YMCA being at the high school as a child care setting. And I guess the bigger question is, so why is it here at the board? Why is it coming to the town council? And why do you want to do this? The thought is that we want to get into a lease agreement with the YMCA where we would give them classroom space in the high school, one classroom which is already dedicated to the preschool, and additional classroom space at the high school for the full use of the entire building at the YMCA. Currently, we're renting one room. It was a nominal rental fee. I think it was $600 a month. Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong. It was $500 or $600 a month. That hadn't gone up in the last 5 years. But now we'd have the whole building, thus expanding the program because we're getting in with Cromwell. And they would give us that building 7 days a week, 24 hours a day for the use of the classrooms in Berlin High School. But because it's a multi-year lease and, the backing of the town council on this, I know that Aaron McGurk, our assistant superintendent's on, Eileen Eustace, I'm not sure if she's on, but she was going to be here, fully in support of it from a curriculum standpoint of what it would allow for our students at the high school to work with the young students that would be in preschool, but also what it would do on the backside for our Transition Academy to have the entire building and to continue that program. So that's a little background about it. I know the first thought is why not keep it at the high school, and I hope I explained that initially. But we've been at the building. This, I think, is our 5th year there, and it's been very successful. And the proximity, it's close to the bus stop, it's close to the bank, the grocery store. It's a great location. So, Arosh, I don't know if that explains enough. I know we've had multiple conversations about it. I don't know, Jeff or Linda, if you want to add anything else that I missed.
Hey, Brian,
Yes.
I got a couple of questions. So how the space at the Y building, that's just a classroom, right?
No, there's a front office.
Yeah.
There's a front office, a front portion of the building. I'll let Linda explain it, but the front office, and there's a main section of the building that we don't have, and we only had the back of the building. So we had a little kitchen area, and we had one room in the Y.
Yeah, so Mark, this is Linda Holt, Director of Pupil
Hey, Linda.
Personnel Services.
Yeah.
Regardless, if we were going to keep that, have that space for next year, we would have had to expand. There's no way we're going from 11 students this year to 26 next year. So we couldn't have just continued to be in that one space in the Y for next year because we're double, we're going up in our numbers. We're actually going to need another teacher. We'll need more adults on top of that. So we would ask the Y if we could use more space irregardless, because we wouldn't have been able to run our program just in that one back room. As Brian said, when you walk in the Y, there's a front office area, then there's 2 smaller classrooms to the side, and then you walk into a big utility area, and then in the back is where our current classroom is. So it is giving us a significant amount more space to work with the students.
Go ahead.
This is Jeff. How you doing, everyone? I think it's important to say that when Linda was first speaking about this, how she's going to have to do some changes with the program going forward. We would have had to, if we didn't have this opportunity with the Y downtown in the former post office building, we would have had to go out and find space. Even in the town of Berlin, it's very difficult to not only find space appropriate for that for students, but also to pay for space. So it was both a budget item and a logistics item. And as far as I'm concerned, when the idea came up to kind of barter spaces between the high school where we had some space available and could fit into the curriculum of the daycare center, and also have the Transition Academy get the entire building downtown and utilize that and grow its space, it was a perfect marriage. And so what we've tried to do is make sure between the leases, between the leases that it works out, between the arrangements, what the Y has to do and what we have to do from a town/BOE standpoint. I'm very pleased at the way it's working out, that we've already had a partnership with the YMCA for years in a number of situations of daycare, after school items, summer program. It works very, very well with the Board of Ed. We're comfortable with that partnership. I think this is just a brand new item which will enrich everybody. So again, it's what could have been a very complicated situation for us, can be a very smooth one, and a very good one for both not only the high school, but for the rest of the Board of Ed.
Thanks, Jeff. How many kids are in the Y daycare?
There'll be less than 60. 60 would be the tops that they would be having there.
And what ages are they from?
They would be from infants through preschool.
I mean, I have some concerns. I saw you guys discussed that, I think, at the Board of Ed, but COVID being one of them, with the problems we're having at schools today, that now introduce a daycare into the high school, that seems to be very problematic to me in today's world. I would be concerned if I was a parent of an infant going to the high school. That's one problem. Liability, security comes to mind after Sandy Hook. I think there's some, I don't know if we looked into the state statutes, but there were some statutes about different things in schools. And I'm going to let Jeff address some of that. There's some other issues with our reimbursement for the school building, for the use that we said we would do with the school. I just don't know. I didn't see those topics discussed at the Board of Ed. Maybe they were. So I think we need, if not tonight, but we need some details. And I'm curious, when did we first find out about this?
This was discussed earlier in the year. And it was a matter of that we were notified that we would be losing the space that's currently at the Y. And so it probably happened 3 months ago, maybe, Mark?
So 3 months ago, and from what I understand, I first heard about it, I believe Arosh did too, last Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, and where you guys wanted building permits. I'm a little upset that you didn't kind of vet this earlier. We had 3 months. Now it seems to be a bit of an emergency. I don't know why we didn't hear about it before. And I just think there's a lot of unanswered questions, for me anyway. And before we go on, let me have, if I could have Attorney D'Onofrio bring some of those to light in a little bit more detail, and then we could discuss it some more.
Sure.
Jeff?
With respect to the grant issue, and I don't know whether this is something that the Board of Ed has already dealt with the state on, but Connecticut General Statute 10-283 is the statute that primarily deals with the grant process for a school construction project. And the process, the way it really works is, after the project is accepted as complete by the Board of Ed, which I don't think has actually happened yet for Berlin High School, there's a final grant application that gets filed. and the state comes in and does an audit. And in addition to determining the final tally for eligible and ineligible costs, one of the things they can look at is under 10-283 3A is any portion of the project that was funded with state grant dollars that is abandoned, sold, leased, or otherwise redirected for a different use other than that which the grant application provided for, which is based on the education specification that's submitted with the EDO 49, the grant application. And so the way it works is they calculate the grant on a straight line basis over a 20-year period. And the possibility is there that when they do an audit, if they see that a portion of a project that they funded with a grant has been repurposed, they could
You're welcome.
request
Have a good
that-
night.
They could request that a portion of that grant be refunded or repaid by the town. So I think, you know, if that's something that hasn't been looked at yet by the Board of Ed, that's something that needs to be reviewed, and you may want to have some communication with the state about it. But I'll tell you, I do a lot of school construction work, and the direction that the Connecticut public school construction grant program is going in terms of reimbursement is to find more and more costs ineligible. So I'd be very careful about having the town set up to get a letter several years from now after the audit's completed saying you repurposed a portion of the building and you therefore have to refund a portion of the grant. So that's the grant issue. With regard to a security issue, obviously it's not appropriate for us to talk about in public session any specific security issues. But there was, obviously, we're all aware of Public Act 13-3, which came after Sandy Hook and requires every school district for every school facility to have a safety and security plan on an individual school basis. As a matter of fact, there's a meeting tomorrow of the education committee of the legislature to consider a proposed House bill that would require the Department of Emergency Services to review the safety and security plans, kind of audit what's been submitted, because there's a feeling that municipalities and school districts may have complied initially, but haven't complied with the update requirements of the law. So obviously, if you're gonna have a third party lease space within a school facility, that needs to be accounted for in the safety and security plan. It may have, I haven't seen the plan. I don't know if it does or not. And then the third issue that I have is I noticed that in the agenda item, it said that the lease was subject to Corporation Council's review. I've never seen it. I haven't seen a draft. I have no idea what the lease looks like. So you may want to get me a copy of that if it's something I'm going to have to sign off on.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. The other thing is I noted, although I know the text got changed, that there was one of the earlier agenda items we got sent on this issue talked about some rooms at the high school and a room in another school to be determined later. What's that mean? Is that not correct, or?
The thought was at this point there were two daycare / preschool, and that we would look for a third room to have additional preschool / daycare in it.
In another school?
In another school or the high school.
You know, I guess, Brian, with all honesty, listen, I love the why. We want to do the best we can for our transitional students, but, you know, I asked about some space at the high school a couple of years ago, and I was told we have no extra space. And now we do, which is fine. But I just think it's kind of a last minute thing with apparently some of these issues maybe they were discussed. I couldn't see them on the record at the BOE, but a lot of problems. Then we have the cost, right? The cost estimates 50,000 estimate, I guess. But it's not clear if the Y is paying for all of that or certain costs the YMCA will reimburse the Board of Ed or Town of Berlin for certain costs. So does that mean the town now has to pay for costs to renovate these rooms in our brand new school?
Why? Well, first, let's go back. I think the first thing to talk about is that, you talked about the issues with the construction project and so on. I know that this is done in many high schools across the state, so it's definitely doable. How it was done and, what laws and things that were aligned with or not, I can't say, with any that were how they did it or what is done. But many high schools have preschools and daycares within the high school setting. But that being the case, as far as what you said about the space in the high school, I think it's important to know the space you talked about is moving the Board of Ed to the high school. And that wasn't something in the original plan. And the space we're talking about is classroom space. I think those are two different things. So to say there's not space and there's space for one and the other, I don't think that's really a fair statement. But, the point here is that if the town council feels that it's not, something to move forward with, it just means that we'll have to find a different building to lease and incur that cost within that. The thought was not to incur the cost and to also meet the curriculum needs in the high school and to kind of, as Jeff said, to kind of make it was a win-win, I thought, for one, daycare being available for teachers in the building and town residents, the town residents having the security, our security system there for their children when they come to daycare, because the daycare is predominantly Berlin families located in the high school where they may have siblings. So to me, it was a way of meeting the needs without expending any additional money and incurring expenses year to year, other than using space that we had there. But if there are all these different areas that are concerned, then the board will look at another way to meet the need, which really is finding another facility to rent or lease, and that's something we can do too. It was trying to really have a cost-saving measure on meeting on both ends. The timeline, was the timeline. It wasn't something that the Y told us earlier. Should we have known earlier? Maybe we should have. But we also got the space for 5 years at a real nominal fee. So, and it's been a good partnership from that end. So that's, I think I speak for all of us in that, Mark. But that was the reason we were doing it. And, I don't think it's a matter of, we're trying to do this or use the town the wrong way or have grant money not reimbursed. That was not the position of the board, nor has it been. It really was a way to save money over time using space that we already have.
No, and yeah, I don't mean that way, but obviously before we enter some type of agreement, we need to know, all the answers to what may incur
Absolutely.
the town. And obviously it doesn't appear that we know all the answers yet. I mean, as far as the grant, I'm sure we could update the security plan, but also there's another concern I have is congestion at the high school. So up to 60 kids in the morning with the high school traffic. So now we're going to add a daycare. And plus we're talking about, right, the last plan I saw was the community center going across the street, more traffic. I'm not sure 60 young children preschool at the high school as young as infants is a good decision. Basically.
Is there in fact a plan in place? I mean, is there going to be a separate entrance and exit for the daycare, kids that are coming in, for parents? I would imagine there's got to be some type of a plan to accommodate that.
We've had John Smoltz, our security director, meet with the Y. The Y is totally amenable to whatever security we put in place, whatever entrance plan. There would be a separate entrance. But, Mark makes the point, there will be another 60 people and they will be dropping off kids. And that's the truth. I think the pickup would not be a coordination issue. The drop off could be, and we'd have to have a special location. And we talked about that at this point, but it definitely is some logistical things to deal with.
Sure.
And the grant would concern me that we're going to lose reimbursement, which what are we owed? Maybe, I don't know, $3 million after we sign off on the project, assuming the state agrees with everything, which from what we hear, the environment at the state, other school systems, as I know, have not gotten full reimbursements for various reasons. So we may be handing them a new reason to not reimburse us down the road, which could be very costly from the town perspective. I get it's a great deal maybe to trade space with the Y. I don't disagree. Like I said, I love the Y. They're great. But if we're going to lose, $1 million down the road, or, a couple 100,000 or 500,000, or who knows what the state's going to do. They're desperate for money, as we know. So they're not very easy to deal with. And of course, we haven't even signed off on this, and we're talking about a 5-year lease. That would be concerning, I think, to town. And again, it's a town building. It's the Board of Ed, but it's a town building in the end. And we just have to be fair to all taxpayers, and trying to accommodate certainly our transitional students is number one. I think should be number one in everyone's mind. If that Y building downtown doesn't work, I'm sure we could find some great space for that group. But there's still a lot of unanswered questions. I think we should at least try and answer before we go forward with it, if that makes sense to you, Brian.
Excuse me, Linda, you said that our transition population, our transition kids is going from, you said 15 to 26?
11 to 26.
11 to 26. Okay. And I know I've been in the academy, which is fantastic. It's so great to see these kids just so empowered and learning the life skills that they need. But it is a small space, most definitely. And what is the time constraint on it? Does the academy have to be out of there again?
We were originally asked that the Y would have to go back in March 1st if we could happen. So that's why we were trying to expedite things. And it wasn't a week ago. It was over the last 2 months. So that wasn't a fair statement. It was over the last 2 months that we were working on it, and we were unaware that it even had to go to the town. And that was something that just came up about a week ago, and that was the rush to talk to Roche and to get it on the agenda tonight. Typically in the past, when we've renovated space for special programs for students, we've done those through Doug Solek, and we drafted the plan. And I guess the caveat here was that because it was an outside agency, we knew the health department had to give approval to every change that we make. The health department would have to give approval to, because it is licensed by the state as a daycare. And we knew there'd be some things there, but we didn't realize about the lease agreement and that. And so that's why we asked Attorney Onofrio to be the person to absolutely represent the town and look at the lease that was being drafted. So.
But so March 1st, it's March 2nd today. What happens now?
So what happens now is that we go back to the Y and say that the town at this point is not seeing that it's really a viable option, because there's liability issues here, there's reimbursement issues, and it's not something looked on with favor. And we go to Linda and say, let's start looking for a new place to lease. And we tell the Y, what do you want to lease the facility? Are you moving your daycare there? And we tell them it's not going to happen. That's where we end up with it. And we move forward. That's the line here is that we didn't budget for a different transition academy for this year's budget, and we'll have to find money to find a location. We estimated that the space we need on Farmington Ave, if we can find it, probably $40,000 to $50,000 to lease per year. That's a guesstimate. So, we had space already set up at Transition Academy. We had a kitchen there. It was just renovating the other space, making it, usable. So, we're going to go back to the drawing board, and the Y will have to do the same. I mean, that's I think where we're at. Yeah. Now, you mentioned the students coming in from Cromwell. I assume they will help with the cost, right? We're not paying for their students too to be in our. No. How does that work? No. Linda, can you explain how it currently works when we have Cromwell students?
Right. This is the third year that Cromwell, we've been trying to form this partnership together. They are smaller than us, so they have a smaller number of students. So the first year they sent 1 student. The past 2 years they sent 3. We were charging them the per pupil cost over the past 3 years. This year it's like we rounded it up to $20,000 per student. We're meeting with Brian, myself, and Ashley, and then their business manager, their superintendent, and their director on Monday to really talk about how can, instead of doing this tuition-based program, how can we actually put our program together? Farmington and Simsbury did this 25 years ago, so that we can make it more cost-effective. You know, the goal is to be 50-50. That's something we have to put on the table with Cromwell. Again, they have less students than we have. So, you know, can we work up to that? I did reach out to the directors of Farmington and Simsbury. Like I said, they were the first ones to do this 20 plus years ago. They do it 50-50. That's where we actually sent some of our kids 5 years ago. The tuition was $43,000. Now it's up to $51,000. Again, my first step was, let's get our transition academy out of the high school. We did that with the support of the Board of Ed, the support of the Y 5 years ago. Then I was reaching out to other surrounding towns to say, can we merge our programs together to share costs? So it looks like that's going to happen next year. My next goal is, can we then tuition kids in like Farmington and Simsbury do now? So then we can add, you know, we can continue to make some money on this program as Farmington and Simsbury are doing. So, I mean, that's been my long-term goal down the road. But first, we have to do it in baby steps. And we need a good space off. We need to be in the community. That's the selling point. That's why I had to send those two kids. Farmington and Simsbury's programs actually on a college campus. So that was the selling point. Ours is in the community. We're able to keep our kids in the school. If we had to go to due process right now to argue with parents, we would win because we're in the community. If we were continue to be housed in the high school, we would lose, and we would end up outplacing kids. So, I mean, I where our vision has been, we're meeting each milestone, but that's where we are right now. So our meeting is Monday with Cromwell to say, how can we make this partnership work? What's it going to look like? So our goal would be to be 50-50, to split it right down the middle with transportation to field trips, transportation to job sites. We give the kids stipends. We go on field trips. Staff, you know, we have to hire another teacher. How will that look? Paraprofessionals, how will that look? So it's a win-win to put our programs together.
No, that's great. I'm just trying to learn about it. That's all. That's really what tonight is about. I think that's wonderful, and it's all for the kids, no question about it. You know, and if the Y space doesn't work, then I'm sure you know, we could find something maybe even better in Berlin for the academy. So that's great. So you know, these are my concerns. You heard from our corporation council members. Please speak and whatever you want to say.
I'd just like to say, Mark, thank you, Linda, for doing what you're doing. This is a wonderful program, and I think that it's very, very important that we do something. I just think that we need to get all our ducks in a row, since this is really the first we're hearing of it over the past couple of days, and try to get a plan in place so that we can make this happen appropriately. That being said, you know, I'm sure that we can find a very nice place for them, at least move in that direction.
Thank you, Don. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I was just trying to follow along. The building on Main Street, does the Y own that building, and did they lose their lease? Is that why they're looking for new space for their kids?
I
Somebody
don't.
can answer that.
Oh yeah, because so the Y, right? Actually, we didn't ask that, Brian. Just so the Y is on the Chamberlain Highway now, right? Are they in that?
The Y owns the space on Main Street, the one that they leased to us. The Y, my understanding is, I don't think they don't own the space on Chamberlain.
Okay, so it's Chamberlain. Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, so I take it they're being they want to leave there. Their lease is up. They're asked to leave. Do you know? Out of curiosity.
I believe their lease is up.
Okay. And they don't want to lease it again?
They don't want to get into a long-term lease again, my understanding. That was the.
Okay. Just curious.
So I have a couple more points, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I think it's a great idea to reach out, you know, Linda and Brian, for other towns. You know, I'm surprised that other programs aren't being looked at that way. I mean, we have a legislature that may, you know, want us to regionalize a little more. I'm surprised we haven't seen this with the ESS program. Maybe the Board of Ed's talked about that. My concern is the perception is that we're helping out a private business and we're setting a precedent. You know, the relationship with the Y, you guys love it. It sounds like a great program. I think we have a lot of questions. My question is too, you have a daycare, you want to bring in more into the high school. How does the teacher union react? You have a private business with their own people. I just don't know what that relationship is. And have we looked at buildings like Pistol Creek, the town-owned building? I don't know, those just some of my thoughts.
Thank you, Brendan. Any other counselors? Okay. So we still, so at a minimum, Brian and Linda and Jeff, Jeff Cugno, can we get the lease to Jeff D'Onofrio, obviously, and I know the time frame seems to be very short, but did the Y? I'm assuming the Y got an extension at their daycare on the Chamberlain Highway, or do you know, Brian?
When we realized that the timeline was too tight and that there were various permits and things that needed to be, that we typically haven't had to do in the past, and talking with Doug, because it's been internal work that we've done for, various programs like our program at the middle school. But when that happened, the message to the Y simply was, it's not going to happen on this timeline. So there really wasn't a choice, or it's not going to happen at all. So that was the message.
But I mean, even with last Thursday, I believe we first heard of it. It wasn't going to happen by March 1st from last Thursday. That's for sure, right? No matter what, even if tonight we say yes, you still got to do $50,000 worth of construction costs. That's not going to be done in a day, right?
It wasn't last Thursday. Have you heard of it? When we knew that the lease had to be a multi-year, the understanding of what I was emailed was that a multi-year lease needed to be approved by the town council and then needed to but it was talked about this is something that we've had ongoing for 2 months, more than 2 months, with Doug, and getting prices and looking at the rooms and looking at the space and talking about it. So it probably was in the discussion for 3 or 4 months about the possibility of it. But as we move further, there was a realization that it had to go through and get all the different sign-offs, and so then it became a time crunch issue with getting it done in an amount of time that would make things feasible.
I mean, if the Y, and listen, we love the Y too. They're in town. We want the Y to have a bigger presence in town. You know that. We want the Y to build the Y, and I know, your brother wants to do that. I think the board of directors wants to do that, and I think we want them in Berlin. So that space, if we had to move the transitional academy, which sounds like that might have to be the way just because of the time, but they would move back into that building, and I take it in its entirety.
I don't know whether they would move back into that building or look for another space.
Okay.
I know their lease was up on the Chamberlain Highway. I can't speak to, why they're leaving the Chamberlain Highway. I don't know what the lease structure was there, and in all clarity, my initial discussion with the board, I disclosed it is my brother. I'm not looking to, look for, and that's why I've tried to stay distant. We've had board members at every meeting I've had with them. The thing is, we do have the Ys in all our buildings for before and after school programs, and things of that nature. Like I said, our perspective was that it would be a win for the Y maybe, and a win for the community, not just the transition students, but also the parents who are taking their children to daycare or preschool to have it in our buildings, with all of our safety and our security and, everything we do for our students, and allow us to continue on with the program where we had. But, if there's if there's concerns about reimbursement of grants and things, I know that the Meriden schools have a similar program. I know there's Farmington has a similar program. I believe a preschool program. There's a lot of programs that have programs within the school for the child development. They're not always Y programs, but they do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do we have a little bit of time to at least review some of these things? Let Attorney D'Onofrio look at the lease and look at the statute again. And I mean,
I'm willing to work with you any way we can. I
Yeah.
still believe it's a good thing for kids.
Yeah.
I do believe it's the right thing for the community. I think parents would welcome the preschool and daycare being in the high school with the security that we put in place. And it's been, funds that the town council's put there for security staff. But I mean, I'll talk to the Y, and I don't know what they're willing to wait on. I know that if it's not gonna happen, they need to know because they want to make other plans. And we're gonna have to make other plans quickly too, because if we don't maintain that building, as Linda said, we have 26 students we got to prepare for next year. And taking on a different building could mean, renovations and things that we need to make it work for us. Where that building is already, we've already had that, so.
Well, I agree. And I mean, I agree that I think the transition students, and I know it is for all of us here in the meeting, is our most important goal and concern is to get what they need for their program and join with Cromwell. I think that's wonderful too. So that's to me would be the biggest concern, to make sure we take care of them and get the program. It seems like it's doing great, and that's wonderful to hear, and it's going to grow, and it's even better. So we do need a little time. I don't know, Brian, if you want to get back to the Y and tell them we do need a little bit of time. Not sure what the end result will be. If we have to have a special meeting, we can do that, instead of waiting till the next council meeting. I think we would all agree to do that, depending upon what happens. And maybe even in the interim, we could look at some space, whether it's on Farmington Avenue or wherever it might be. I don't know if Pistol Creek works. I guess if they're coming from Cromwell, it's closer to Cromwell. I know it's a little bit off the beaten path. I heard what you said about that, Linda. So, but it's an option. It's there. It's open. It's a fairly big space. No one uses it. It's actually a beautiful location. But
Mark, they actually use that space to bring all the transition academies together. They use the pavilion. They bring 100 kids there. The biggest downfall of that space is it's not in the community. It's just too far removed from all the resources that they learn how to use.
Gotcha. Okay. So, I mean, that's fine. That's what it is. That's what it is. So, I think there's still, although we're filling up Farmington Avenue, which is a good thing for the town, but I think there's still space there. I bet you some landlords would be happy to rent their space. Understandable. Obviously we're gonna have to pay for whatever we rent. We're paying now to the Y. So can we, just so I don't want to be caught, flat-footed that the Y says, "Oh, you guys got to get out. We got nowhere to go," and of course we have no space for our kids. So can we very quickly look for some space? Can we get the information to Corporation Council for review and look at that statute a little bit closer and just see what we got?
Yeah, this is Jeff. I think that Attorney D'Onofrio brought up some good points. I think those should be looked at a little more. We haven't really addressed anything with the state school department on what that would do with reimbursement. So that is something that I think, we want to know a little bit more about. And I appreciate you bringing that up, Counselor. As far as logistics on making the daycare work at the high school, if in fact that we were to go that way, it's been looked at a lot by our security. It's been looked at for parking. It's been looked at for access. There's been a number of things. We haven't heard yet that there's any physical reason why or logistics reason why that it wouldn't work well at the high school. However, I can appreciate, and we all can, the comments that were brought up here today relative to some other concerns. So, we certainly want the town to be happy with this, as we do everybody else. So the leases that we have are draft leases. I can get them to you immediately to take a look and see how at least we were doing the legalities of it. And as far as any other questions that we can answer, you can be assured that, the business office would do whatever it has to do to answer the council's questions and provide more information. But clearly, if we're not going to move forward at the high school, then we've got to jump into doing some other things for the Transition Academy, as the mayor says.
Yeah.
Mark, could I add a few thoughts on behalf of the Board of Education members?
Yes, sure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you letting me speak on behalf, as the board chair. So one point that was brought up, and I'm glad you brought it up about there not being enough space for the Board of Ed to move into the high school. When that was brought up was when the Transition Academy students, to my knowledge, were still occupying the building. Though it was a full Board of Education moving over there and there wasn't space for that, but we did still have Transition Academy students as far as I can remember. And a lot of the questions that the town council has brought up tonight, I appreciate. I feel like the Board of Education members have brought up very similar, if not all of the same. I believe it was in the November or December board meeting, maybe January. I know it was presented at the F&O committee first and then at the board, the full board meeting. And a lot of people had a bunch of questions very similar to where you're at right now. As a member of the Board of Education who's been on the board when the Transition Academy moved from the high school to the Kensington YMCA, it's really important location-wise because they have access to the public transportation, the bus line, a ton of businesses, so they can start working and receiving that stipend that was talked about. Also, the location, we are able to meet the needs of the students because if we brought it back to the high school or somewhere off the beaten path, then parents can argue that it's not meeting the needs and we will have to outplace, which will be a significant financial burden. And another question I had asked was, because I think this is important for the staff within the district, will there be spots available for the teachers in the district to bring their children, to the daycare? And the answer to that was, as far as we know, just not having a transition academy in the location that it's at could potentially really jeopardize our relationships with those families where they then push for outplacement. So as you know, that can be really costly. So I just figured I would share those few thoughts.
No, thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. No, I mean, there's a lot of concerns. I'm sure you guys raised them. I just wish that if we had this earlier, we probably could have answered a lot of these before tonight, and probably would have made things a little bit better. Just like you mentioned, there's daycare in other high schools. Is it private or is it town run? I mean, I'm just curious the answer to those questions too. If we can get those answers, we don't need to answer them tonight, but these are some of the questions that, just off the top of our heads for one meeting here, we have, and again, the town, it's the town we have to, look at, certainly the Board of Ed and the, but it's a town building and we have to, make sure we protect the town. And I'm a little bit concerned about liability too, about what happens if, God forbid, something happens in the school and, God forbid somebody gets COVID. To me, the town's on the hook for whatever happens. I don't care what kind of indemnity agreement you have with the Y. We're on the hook for it. No matter what happens with that daycare, the town will be responsible for everything that goes on there. Agreement or no agreement. We know agreements are made to be broken. We've got a bunch of lawyers on the call here. I think we know that. So that's really concerning to me. And I'm not sure I'd want infants in a high school. That surprises me that other schools do it. But if it's town run, I understand. Maybe it's a little bit different, but it's a third party here. So, but we can answer these questions, but it sounds like in the meantime, we certainly better look for some space for our academy and at least let the Y know, like maybe they have, another option. I don't know. Again, this is all new. So, whatever we can do to work quickly, I suggest we all work together and do that and come up with the best solution possible. So we'll go ahead and table this. If you could get the documents, Jeff, to Attorney D'Onofrio, he can get a look at that. We could look at that statute, maybe even talk to the state. I'd be curious offline at some point to see the security plan and what that entails changing. It's a little bit different. We have protecting infants than students at our high school. I mean, similar, principles, but different, a lot different. So, and then whatever you think, Brian, whatever, if you talk to the Y, you could talk to them, see what they say, and just a little bit more discussion. Again, as quick as we can. I don't know what to tell you guys. You've been discussing it for a while. This is our first shot at it, so. And we can talk offline, maybe Brian and Attorney D'Onofrio, Jeff, Arosh, Julia, just have some discussion in the next couple days, maybe. That makes sense.
Nope, I understand completely.
Okay. All right, great. So thank you, everybody. And we'll continue this discussion offline and see what we can all do with this situation.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, if I may move on to agenda item number 2.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
It's a request from the Housing Authority to hire a consultant to administer the CDBG grant. Joe Bajowski is on the line. Joe, over to you.
Hello.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Hello.
He just muted you.
Excuse me for a second. I just have to attend to something here.
Hello, Joe.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I had an 11-year-old that needed attending to, so I am back. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. I am here in front of you tonight to request the appointment of a community development block grant consultant for the Knights of Columbus project on Percival Avenue. Our consultant on this project interviewed 2 candidates for the consultant position, David Berto of Housing Enterprises, Inc., and Peter Testa with the other competitor, I guess, or applicant. Based on their interviews and discussions, our consultant has recommended moving forward with Housing Enterprises. They felt that Housing Enterprises has more experience in property development when it comes to community development block grants and the specific component of infrastructure work, which is what we're going to be focusing on to use this money for. That being said, on Wednesday of last week, the Department of Housing issued an announcement that they are scheduling their conference to announce the funding round for 2021 on March 30th. Place to be determined. I'm assuming it's going to be online, but they have not stated that as of yet. The grant application is going to be June 18th of 2021. That's the target date right now for that application to be filed.
What was it?
Excuse me?
I didn't catch that. What was the date again?
June 18th of 2021. That's my presentation at this point in time, pending any questions or further discussion.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Questions from the council or Arosh?
No, not pertaining to this particular one. I just want to remind the council, and I think Joe, Jim Mahoney reached out to you. The option with the Housing Authority runs out March 31st.
Yes.
So you need to bring it back perhaps the next meeting and request the council to extend it.
We're having some discussions with my consultants as to what the appropriate time frame should be before I responded to Mr. Mahoney's email. I just don't want to pick a date and then you have to come back and change that date. So I'm hoping in the next day or two to have a concrete answer for you as to how long of a period of time we need.
Thank you, Joe.
Yep.
Any other discussion, input from the council?
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Joe and I talked. There's a $3,000 payment that will be required to make to this consultant for working with the CDBG grant. And if you get the grant funds will pay for it. And I've confirmed with Joe, if you don't get it, which is highly unlikely, the housing authority will cover the cost.
Yeah, there's not going to be any expense incurred by the town of Berlin on this.
That was my question. That was my next
Yeah.
question. So what do we think about this grant, Joe? Do we have a pretty good opportunity of getting it?
Based on the conversation I've had, yes. We've not been through this grant process in over 5 years, if memory serves me correctly. So it's not like we're there every single year asking for money. We've been awarded over $4 million total in the past using both these consultants. David Berto has been working for the town and the housing authority, and so has Peter Testa. So we've been successful. Like I said, we've raised over $4 million that's gone into upgrading the housing stock of the housing authority. So we feel quite confident moving forward that we'll be able to secure the grant for the infrastructure portion of the construction.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? If not, we'll go ahead and take a motion on this.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to authorize the town manager to engage Housing Enterprises, Inc. of Enfield, Connecticut for consultant services to apply and administer a small cities grant for the Berlin Housing Authority on the behalf of the town of Berlin, and to set a public hearing to discuss and to solicit citizen input on the 2021 Small Cities Community Development Program application for a future date.
A second on that?
I second the motion.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate it. Yeah,
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
thank you.
Agenda item number 3 is a request from the previous council meeting to revisit the amount that we reimbursed for mailbox damage from snowplows. And Mike Ahern is here to talk about it.
Hi, Mike.
Yeah. Hi. Good evening. I understand I was not the last town council meeting, but I understand the, I guess maybe from comments from residents that $35 for a mailbox and $40 for a post was not sufficient, or maybe didn't include the hardware and the cement, whatever. So I've heard $100 was discussed at the meeting, so I made it an even $50 per mailbox and $50 per post. So for someone who gets both knocked over, there's $100 in their hands. They can get the hardware, the cement, and everything else. And if they have to get someone to do it, it's not going to cover it. But I think it's pretty reasonable. So that's one request that I think that the town council had. The second request was about more information about what other communities are doing. So we attached a 1997 CCM survey on that topic, and since it's so old, Lisa in our office reached out to them and asked for an update, which they said might be within 2 weeks we get. So once we get that back, we'll forward it to Rose and to you as well, so you can take a look and see what everyone else is doing around the area.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, I think we saw some of that. It seems like they're all over the map, and
yeah,
some of them I thought, the $100 seems pretty reasonable. We don't have a necessarily extremely large number. I know it depends on the snow and how heavy it is for every year. And some of them, which I was surprised to see, they actually have the town go out and fix it, which to me is much more expensive. If you start spending town right, public works time on fixing everybody's mailboxes, that's going to cost quite a bit. So this at least is some measure of replacement by the town for what, of course, is a weather event, not really anybody's fault, but
right.
Seems reasonable for our residents if the council agrees. Any comments from the council for the $100 payment?
I think that's fair.
Okay.
Didn't we just
Joanne. I think you're.
Yeah. Didn't we just like raise this to 75 not too long
Yes.
ago?
Yes, we did.
So I don't know, Mike, didn't you do some research on costs?
Well, I just took a look at some of the mailboxes that are out there, and it's, regular mailbox with regular posts, and even with the cement comes to somewhere around $66, $68. I just think we made the change a couple weeks ago,
Right.
and I don't know if we just continue to make changes like that. To me, if it's an egregious misfire by us, that yeah, we should definitely make the change. But if we can cover the cost of $75, which to me it seems like you can do that just fine, I don't understand why we would need to make that change.
I did have some calls from residents about it, mainly it was from some of our seniors that, of course, had to go ahead and hire somebody as well. So I know we're not necessarily paying for the labor, but as I guess we see in other towns, the town goes out and fixes it for people. So I think if we look at it from that perspective, if we have to send a town out to however many boxes every year we may accidentally knock down, then that cost is much more expensive than $100 a box. And this maybe gives them, if what you say, I mean, the boxes I look at are pretty expensive out there, even the less expensive ones. But if they get $75 for the box and the post, and a little bit to pay someone to help them, and which was some of the calls and emails I did receive. No, $100 seems pretty fair. I don't think what did we spend last year what's the average? About $1,000 a year, a roach, something?
I think around 1,500. I think
Okay.
right now we're before the last storm was that we had 35 claims, and not all were for both. This is not a budget buster. I mean, this is not going to cause us any heartache on our end. And the other thing that I guess one way to look at it is if we raise it to 100, we can then leave this policy in place for a while. The other policy was in place since 1997, so it was obviously up for adjustment. So by putting it up to 100, and I'm not lobbying for this, I'm actually acting on your wishes, but if we do that, we can extend this out without, hopefully, not too many resident complaints about that it's not paying for a box or post. Right now it does, absolutely. I'd love to get $100 and I could make money on this, if I had to do my own. So, but there are elderly people, and I think Mark the mayor has also spoken to an elderly lady who said she can't do this, she has to hire someone. So that's where, if we want to be reasonable for some folks with contractors, it's a little more than the parts, but it's a little less than actually a contractor or a carpenter coming to do it for somebody. So, I have no objection to raising it to 100. We thought 75 was reasonable, but I have no problem with raising it to 100.
How many complaints have we received?
35 so far this year. Oh, as far as complaints about the price?
Yeah, like Mark had said that he received, some complaints. I'm just curious how many complaints we've received out of all the residents in town.
Well, I received 2 or 3 myself.
Yeah, I'm around 3 to 4,
Yeah, well, I don't know. That doesn't seem like that's enough, of a population to raise from 75 to 100. That's my personal opinion. In addition, we don't know what kind of weather ramifications there will be going forward with climate change and the unpredictability of the weather and how it's going to be and how costs could increase. But I don't know. I'm inclined to keep it at 75. That seems perfectly reasonable in my mind.
Mark, I think 100 is a good price and a fair price. I think if you have to have a mailbox replaced, I think it's $200 to $300, honestly, for the least expensive mailbox.
Yeah.
Mark and Peter.
Yes, sir, Peter.
Mike, raising it so you have to raise it in the future is like cutting off your sideburns so you don't have to get a haircut next month. So I'm not buying that argument. And we just went to 75.
Right.
I think we're wasting too much time on this already. I urge everyone to leave it where it is and see where it goes.
Mr. Mayor, may I suggest something for your consideration?
Sure.
We asked CCM to go and conduct a survey. Should be back in a couple of weeks. When today's results come out, what other towns are doing, we'll have a better sense of, how close we are. Right now, you can't go and replace a mailbox because the ground is frozen. You can't do anything anyway. People don't do it until April or May. So suggestion is to just wait a couple of weeks and see what others, how close we are, how far we are away from others. That's a thought.
Makes sense.
I think we'll wait till the next meeting. That's fine. Like I say, I don't think anybody's replacing any boxes at the moment. So let's put on the agenda for the next meeting, and then we'll go ahead and take a vote next time after we get some more information. That's fine. Just trying to help our residents a little bit. All right, so on to where are we at? Number 4.
Agenda item number 4. It's the authorization for the town manager to enter into a contract amendment with WMC Consulting Engineers for ongoing construction administration for the boulevard to the train station. Mike, you're taking this one too?
Yes, I am. I'm going to help out the economic development folks on this. WMC Engineers designed the Steel Boulevard, which is off Farmington Avenue, to the train station. It's now constructed, which is awesome. They also were in charge of construction administration. This project, we had so many different funding avenues, as well as we had some environmental issues. We had DOT not letting us build the part closest to the train station until I think maybe 2.5 months into the process. So that sort of delayed things. So there were a number of things that WMC had to do that might not have been needed in a standard project. This was a little involved. So their original contract was for $100,000. Jim Mahoney, Chris Edge, and everyone, and Jim Horrible, we all know what they went through and what they're going through. So they asked for another $14,000 to finish up, close out the project, send all of the required reports to all the state agencies that have funded this project, as well as giving us a closeout package. And we still have one change order we're working through with the contractor and the last bills. So we have no problem with this. We're just requesting a $14,000 increase in their construction administration contract to close this thing down.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
I'm good.
All right. If not, go ahead and take a motion on this.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to waive the town's bidding process and authorize the town manager to enter into a contract amendment with WMC Consulting Engineers for $14,000 from the Farmington Avenue Development non-grant account to complete construction administration services for the Boulevard project, as this is in the best interest of the town.
Okay.
Motion.
All right. Second on the motion. Any other concerns or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Agenda item number 5 is a referral of the Sustainable Engineering Solutions Commissioning and Balancing Services School Reopening Final Report of the Berlin Public Schools in response to the State of Connecticut Department of Public Health guidance for school systems for the operation of central and non-central ventilation systems during COVID-19 pandemic memo to the Public Building Commission for its review and recommendation. Doug?
Good evening,
That is
Mr.
over
Mayor.
to you.
Doug.
Sure, this is a follow-up to State Department of Health recommendations and guidelines for returning to school. The commissioning agent, balancing agent, temperature control contractor have completed all the requirements at the 5 schools, issued the report that everybody, I believe, has seen a copy of. As anticipated going into this project, the renovations at the high school and the last 10 years at the middle school were in pretty good shape. The elementary schools with the older systems, we knew we'd have some further recommendations. So within that report, there's a lot of recommendations for temporary solutions to address any concerns, and also in conjunction.
Doug, you're going in.
Hey, Doug.
Somebody else having a problem?
Pardon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doug,
So,
can you see if you can get closer? You're breaking up.
Yeah.
Sure, how about now? Is this a little better?
Yes.
Better for now.
Sorry about that. Yes, in conjunction with what the Public Build Commission is currently working on for the elementary HVAC renovations, we thought it would be best to refer this report to them for their review and recommendations of what some options are for temporary solutions in the interim to assist with COVID concerns.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we're just gonna. We were doing a study, right? I mean, I know we already looked at a lot of this, right, Doug?
Correct. Yeah. The PBC has been working on, potentially a new design renovation for the elementary schools.
Right.
They kind of put a stop to it in the interim until we receive some reports back on the studies of what was done of the current system. So this will work. This report will work in conjunction with future design. But the concern in the interim for the Board of Ed and the families and the students and the parents and staff is that there are some really key recommendations within the report to address any air quality concerns in the interim until the renovations take place. So we're looking for some additional guidance on to help vet out those recommendations. Should it be with further consultants? How should we vet out some key recommendations that are listed within that report?
Right. Yeah, no, that's good. I know, I believe a couple members of the Public Building Commission said there may be some temporary fixes until we get the full renovations done, which would improve the quality. So yeah, that's great. We could get it over to them and let them have a look at it.
Yeah, we are receiving multiple solicitations from firms that offer, portable air filtration systems, ultraviolet lights, many items that are coming through as recommendations. All the national firms, ASHRAE and OSHA, and it's new to everybody. So there's no right or wrong. There's no code on this right now. It's purely a recommendation, and everybody can interpret that recommendation differently. So we're looking for a little additional guidance on this matter.
Yeah, sure, makes sense. In light of COVID and everything, air quality, as we know, is very important. Okay, so any other questions? You guys have questions for Doug? Concerns? If not,
Doug, we're trying to get all this work done on the elementary schools. That's something obviously we're trying to immediately get done for the next school year. Is that something that's feasible to do, or with all the studies that we have to do, is it going to take a little bit longer than that?
I believe that these temporary solutions could be in place for the summer. We just need to.
You're breaking up again, Doug. Sorry.
There's a strong chance that some of these temporary solutions can be in place for the summer of 2021 upon further review, but reaching out to distributors and firms that are working with these products, there's a strong chance that they could be available. But like everything in the country now, in the world with COVID, lead times and equipment and distribution, there could be some additional lead times. So the sooner we kind of vet this out, the better off we are to see which way we want to go.
okay, any other questions for Doug? Hearing none, go ahead and take a motion.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I move to refer the final report of the commissioning, balancing, and temperature control work related to the state of Connecticut guidance for school systems for the operation of central and non-central ventilation systems during the COVID-19 pandemic memo from Sustainable Energy Solutions, LLC of Berlin, Connecticut, to the Public Building Commission for its review and recommendations.
Second on that.
I second.
Okay, any other comments or questions? If not, all those in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? So moved. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor. Thank you.
Agenda item number 6 is to be authorized debt and expenditure authority. That's not me. I'm going to turn this over to Kevin. We do this every year, but I'll turn it over to Kevin to give you a brief description. Take it away, Kevin.
All right. Thanks, Roche. Good evening, everybody. As Roche mentioned, this is something that we do every year. And essentially what we look at is all of our authorized but unissued debt and where projects have been completed and the debt is no longer necessary for the intended purpose. We come back and ask the council to deauthorize the debt. And in that instance, it's essentially the same as saying, if you don't have a credit card or if you have a credit card that you're no longer using or need, you basically cancel the card and move on. We have 3 projects on the list that have all been completed. There is authorization under the debt. The projects are no longer active projects, and so we're asking to do this. It is something that is viewed favorably by the rating agencies as a proactive measure to manage debt and give them confidence that the town is continuing to look at its debt position.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, we've seen this before, so any questions for Kevin? Hearing none, go ahead and make a motion.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the resolution making certain findings with respect to the completed capital projects and repealing remaining authorized but unissued debt and expenditure authority for such projects.
Second on that?
I second the motion.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Agenda item number 7 is a request that you had, Mr. Mayor, some time ago to look at a Tier 2 police defined benefit plan. And Kevin has done a lot of work on this, working with actuaries, and there's a report that we want to share with you. So I'll turn it over to Kevin so that he can give you a summary. Thank you.
Thanks, Arush. Back a few months ago, we talked about essentially bringing about a Tier 2 or a second tier of the existing DB plan. That was amongst some of the considerations that were discussed, including potentially the town joining the Seamers plan as a potential retirement offering, as well as potentially beefing up the existing DC plan to go from a 2-to-1 to a 3-to-1 match. As a result of the meeting late last year, I did some work with the town's actuaries, who also worked with some other towns who have done the same thing, had a DB plan, sunsetted the plan, and then resurrected the plan. So they have had some experience with the circumstances and with the communities. Also, this was discussed at the December Board of Finance meeting. While the Board of Finance doesn't have any authority to vote on this measure, certainly anytime you implement or adjust any pension plan, it has a budget impact, and defined benefit plans can have a substantial budget impact. So it seemed prudent to at least alert the Board of Finance and have a discussion. They expressed some concerns around the financing of this. The current closed defined benefit plan is being worked down, and the liability is available and funded in the town's general fund unassigned fund balance. Essentially, we have savings to pay out what would be necessary. However, it is only savings that is being used to fund that plan today. It is not embedded within the mill rate. The town is not currently taxing residents for the cost of the defined benefit plan. So there was concern raised around adding a new liability to the town's books at a time when the community has expressed an interest in keeping taxes low. And again, the history is not of funding the existing DB plan. With that in mind, I worked with the actuaries to come up with a budget neutral approach. Based on current balances, the idea would be that current defined contribution balances of members, of the police officer members in the DC plan, would use that money to buy in or basically fund the seed money for a new Tier 2 defined benefit plan. The contributions would remain reasonably consistent with the current budget, 6% for members, in line with the 12% that the town currently funds. Based on all of those elements, the amount that they could come up with was 1.5% per year times 3-year average annual earnings times years of service. This would compare to 2.125% of the current plan that the closed defined benefit plan members enjoy today. So it is noticeably less. It assumed a longer work period, 30 years versus the 25 years of the current plan. And again, it assumed all of those assets would move. This proposal was presented to the police union leadership and some other members of the police union. And they expressed concerns about the makeup of the plan. One big thing is that it was not necessarily likely that all of the existing DC assets would transfer over, that not necessarily every member of the current DC plan would be interested in joining the DB plan. There are a number of police officers who have come from other communities where they have been able to retire, already have a DB plan, and are beneficiaries of that, and may not be interested in joining into a new DB plan here with the town. There's also concern that some members may have much higher DC balances than others, and therefore some members would be essentially subsidizing other folks. 30 years was viewed as a very long time, essentially too long for a normal retirement for a police officer, and that the proposed payout at 1.5% was very low. The union indicated that they would come back with a counter, something that they felt would be more in line with what they were looking for out of the plan. At the same time, the town committed to going back to the actuaries and finding out what it would cost for a buy-in option. So rather than assuming everybody's assets move over, having the actuaries look at a plan that would fund 2% a year versus 1.5%, so slightly less than the 2 1/8 that is in the current closed DB plan, but better than the 1.5%. And it would allow individual members to make an assessment as to what his or her buy-in amount would be based on years of service. They could decide whether or not to buy into this new plan. We have received within the last couple of days a counter offer from the police union. And we did recently receive the numbers from the actuaries of what that new plan would look like. In the short term, based on the fact that you have a blend of closed defined benefit plan members as well as potentially new members, depending on the configuration, so essentially depending on how many of them would join in, which is a big unknown. If we were to take all the members and try to factor in what the additional cost would be to the town, so on top of what's currently budgeted for DC contributions, that number would be between $75,000 and $130,000 per year right now. That number will grow over time because there are still 8 members who are in the old defined benefit plan. 4 of those members have passed normal retirement age, and therefore the town is not contributing anything, nor are the members contributing anything to the pension plan. The other 4 continue to contribute to the old plan. As those 8 positions move out of the old plan, so as the 8 members retire, they'll be replaced by individuals who would have the opportunity to join this new plan. The $75,000 to $130,000 per year is projected to increase between $140,000 and $200,000 per year above what's currently in the budget for the pension plan. And those numbers would be expected to grow as officers stay with the force and their salary goes up. There's not a guarantee they will stay with the force, but considering that is a significant underlying intent of making this move, the hope and I think the expectation would be they would remain with the police force and therefore their salary would grow and the additional cost beyond what is in the budget for fiscal year 22 would grow to something north of $200,000. The other piece to consider is the difference between the defined contribution and defined benefit plan is in the defined contribution plan, the town makes a contribution, a match to the employee's contribution, and then the town's responsibility is over. I mean, effectively, we are the plan sponsor, so we do support a plan for folks to invest in, but we don't guarantee the outcome. In a defined benefit plan, the town is ensuring a benefit. So the 2% times 3 years average annual earnings times years of service produces a benefit at retirement. That benefit is determined by the actuaries, and that is the liability of the town. If the assets that are contributed every year are not sufficient, essentially where we are with the closed DB plan, and that could be for no other reason than we assumed an interest rate all through the years, and the interest on the earnings was less than that. It just made less money. The town would be on the hook for filling in the gap. As with the existing DB plan, the members are guaranteed a payout amount based on the actuarial determination. And the assets have to be there from the town. So that's where we are. As I mentioned, within the past couple of days, we did receive a counteroffer from the union. Arosh, Denise, and I did meet and discuss it. And I think at this point, the thing that I guess we're looking for from you is direction as to whether we should continue. There's always a price to continuing these exercises. Our actuaries have done this for really a fairly modest fee, but it is a fee to get to this point. If we were to move forward further, we are getting to the point of engaging attorneys. We are getting to the point of trying to build something out. So you will be looking at, to give you perspective, the cost for the actuaries was $5,000 to run some of these numbers. When you get into the attorneys, you can easily get to $25,000 and $50,000 as we work through a different exercise with the police. We've already spent close to $30,000 this year to deal with the matter. So before we go too far down the path and expend too many town dollars, we just want to make sure that you're aware of where it stands today and get some direction as to where we'd like to go. With that, I don't know if Denise or Arosh want to add anything for our conversation. I know you offered the police to talk as well.
Yes. Just a couple of things, Kevin. I appreciate it, and we'll whoever else wants to, Arosh or Denise or council members, but certainly we know the defined benefit plans are difficult, but we also know that the town, and we wouldn't want to saddle the town with what happened in the past, which was they didn't contribute anything for years to it, which is why we're in the situation we're in. And also they came up with a plan I've never heard of anywhere around the country where they get lump sums, which is really killing us, right? I mean, if we were just paying out annuity payments, it'd be a lot easier on the town, obviously.
That's actually a really good point that I forgot to mention. The plan of the 2% assumes that the lump sum payout option does not exist. So it removes that piece. Sorry, that's a very good point.
Which is the part that is killing us, that lump sum payment, right? If we didn't have to pay out these multi-millions of dollars every year for the, they're in the plan. That's the decision the town made years ago. Great for those members that have it. That's wonderful. But I never heard of that anywhere. People getting a lump sum like that. That's amazing that the powers that be back in the day came up with that. But again, some people, are lucky that way. So good for them. But, so that goes away, obviously. And of course, I would hope going forward, but we can't control what happens, going forward, that the town would, whoever runs the town going forward would have the good sense to put money in the pension plan, which there were years they put nothing in, or $100,000 from what I remember going back 15, 20 years. So huge mistake, but that's many pension plans today. They're not funded properly. In fact, most are not, but so that's that. And then I also wonder for going forward, Kevin, do we look at another type of plan where it would be defined contribution, but there would be tiers of matches, if that makes sense? I don't know. I'm sure that it's a little bit more of a cost too. The longer you stay, the better deal you get. And to entice them to stay longer, even in the defined contribution plan. I don't know if that's an option that you guys have considered or not.
Well, I did look at the moving from a 2-to-1 to a 3-to-1 would add an additional $148,000 to the budget. I should mention that the contribution numbers, or the liability numbers, assume a 6% employee contribution. So it assumes a continuation of 6% in the DB. We could certainly, the DC is a little bit easier to work with because you're dealing with a flat contribution amount. when it comes to a defined benefit, you have to assume an interest rate, you have to assume contribution levels. There's different years of service. So then you start to certainly get into mortality tables and other things like that. So the defined benefit really requires actuarial involvement. DC can become a lot easier to work with. It becomes more of a, for simplification's sake, an Excel exercise.
Okay. So maybe that's something, you know, we're still discussing it, and, you know, hopefully the union would agree that could be an option just to look at a minimum for discussion's sake. And I'm curious, though, the actuaries that we use are the same ones that I think it's, what is it? Is it Brantford PD that made this change recently? A town that I think is of similar characteristics with department size and population. What is this? What they did, or I'm just curious to know what they did.
This is very similar to what they did.
Okay.
We use the same actuaries, not intentionally. We just happen to have the same town pension actuaries going into this. It is consistent. The one noticeable difference would be that there's a disability benefit built into the Brantford plan. This one assumes that we would continue the Lloyd's of London plan that is external to the DC plan today.
So the Brantford plan as it is today, what is their payout formula? Is it the last one here you gave us, the 2%?
It is the 2%.
Okay. All right. So Maroche, Denise, I see John, you're on the phone. Union, you guys want to give us your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm glad it's good we have an open dialogue about this. There's something definitely has to be done, because the current plan that's in place obviously is not helping us retain officers. The younger officers are seeking out another agency with a defined benefit, regardless of one we're carrying now. So, I understand Rome's not built in a day, and I know that Kevin's done a lot of work on this, and we've had a really good dialogue with it. I think we need to keep it going, and I think we as things have happened in the past, we've always been able to kind of work together and figure out some things. As Kevin brought up the Lloyd's of London plan, when we had that whole problem with the disability. At one point, we have a disability plan for officers under the contribution plan, and they just resigned and walked away, and we were able to come up with that plan, which gives the officers some sort of benefit after they leave, so they can kind of build their life back up and get into another field. So yeah, I think it's important we keep moving forward with this. I'm open to anything they're willing to discuss. I would be willing to discuss, another defined contribution plan, with a higher percentages as well. I mean, we're open to hear anything at this point, and we could just keep knocking around. But I think that we do have to do something down the line, or you're going to continue to bleed out officers as soon as their time is up. You're just going to move on, and then just going to be a revolving door.
Okay, thanks, John. So you would be open to adding in this discussion some different type of a defined contribution plan, maybe a little bit more attractive by, I don't know if that works, Kevin, years on the job, or they stay at they get to 10 years, they get a little bit better match. I don't even know if that works, actually.
Well, I think again the union members want a pension, but and I'm not saying we should abandon that. I'm just saying there should be we're willing to discuss alternatives and see what they look like.
Right.
We're not shutting the door on any situation that's going to make a better financial picture down the line for the officers at retirement age. That's all.
Yeah, no, and I'm not saying we'll stop discussion on the defined benefit. I think the fear of all of us, and I know, John, I've said this to you personally, is that we saw, unfortunately, what happened with our defined benefit plan over the last 20 years, and quite frankly, it was a disaster. And we're at the end of it, as far as and again, it was really lump sum payments that I would say killed it really bad. But again, nobody made contributions to it, so I think all of us that at least around the council now and in the town hall are afraid that we go down that road again, and then whatever happens economically, which we know none of us have control over or foresight of, that we'll go ahead and that'll happen again, where it doesn't get funded, and then 10, 20 years down the road again, the town will be in the same bind. I think that is I'm sure that's everyone's greatest fear.
Nobody
you know,
wants to do a sequel of a bad movie. I get it.
yeah. So hence we're very, gun shy and cautious to come up with something that we won't put the town in that situation before. Yet we also understand that, letting officers leave after 2-3 years and to continually train new officers, which is very expensive, is not benefiting the town either. So, and that's kind of foolish too, if we keep going through a revolving door with new officers. So it's a difficult problem, but so more discussion, I may be warranted, certainly with the DB plan, as well as some type of defined contribution, maybe hybrid. I mean, even I don't know. Did you ever think, Kevin, of a hybrid type of plan? And I'm only saying that that's what the federal government uses now for law enforcement. It's a smaller annuity, and however, they do have the defined contribution side of it as well. So they let the officers, the agents, put in to that with a match from the government, and there is a smaller pension, so to speak, defined benefit payment. And it, I don't know, seems to work well for them. They've been doing that since 1984, so it must be working. But I don't know if that's something anybody has considered. Does anybody do that in local or state law enforcement, Kevin, if you know, or maybe the actuaries know?
I'm not aware of anybody in local government doing it, but I do know that there are insurance carriers who have done it. I know several years ago, Cigna actually did something similar. They moved to what they call a cash balance account plus a 401k. And you're exactly right. It's a smaller DB element. And just to be clear, it's substantially smaller, but it is a DB element kind of in addition to the 401k element.
Right.
And that, I mean, that's certainly something we could talk to the actuaries about. If there's an appetite to consider that. I
mean, with that one, at least from what I saw where I sat, I mean, I had just personally the DB option, but I know ultimately as that plan went forward, people, obviously people were not happy as well, because they kind of got rid of the straight DB plan. But as it has moved forward over the last 20 years or so, most of the people in it, at least on a federal level, with what they put into their defined contribution plan, obviously the market's done well if you made the right investments. That's of course on the person, whatever they do with their contributions. But they've been very happy. Of course, we've had quite a run up in the stock market over the last 20 years too, up and down, but mostly up. And they did get a small, safety net, if you will, with the defined benefit side. So I really didn't hear a lot of complaints. Not that they had any choice. The Congress said we did it and we had to do it, but it seems to be working well. So I just, maybe we throw that in the mix as an option for just, again, this is all for discussion, between the town and the union and the PD. And again, just options, if that makes sense.
We did have a hybrid plan proposed. I gave it to the chief. I don't know if Kevin has it. I'll dig the email out.
Okay.
Forward it to him, but that was an idea that one of our members came up with. So,
all right. So
it's another idea.
Maybe add that to the discussion and see where it all comes out. So, So Kevin, more discussion. Maybe that hybrid plan. Maybe the DC plan, a tiered type of plan. Where do you think we go, Kevin, from here to continue this discussion?
Maybe the best next step might be Baroche, Denise, and I sitting down with John and others from the union to kind of figure out next steps, or what we think is something that might be palatable. And then I can go back to the actuaries where that's needed, and if it's DC, it's more of a financial exercise.
Okay.
Baroche, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, bottom line is, what is the town willing to pay for this, right? That's what it comes down to. If you are going between both DB and a DC, it's the same pot of money. Right now, we are counting with this DB plan that people contribute, and the town also contributes what we are contributing. But if the real issue that we are trying to solve here is to try and retain officers, and one I also like from a financial planning perspective to know exactly what the cost is. What I would propose is to look at, as the years of service go up, that we contribute more to the DC plan. 1 to 1, 1 to 2, maybe you want to keep them for 20 years, 1 to 3 as you get to that point. But at least every beginning of the budget cycle, Kevin will know exactly how much you have to contribute, and that needs to get funded in the budget. No surprises. The D plan, that's where a lot of towns and other organizations got out of it. It's a big unknown, and it's a huge liability that you're incurring, and you don't know what the costs are, and it's up to the market. And some plans set survival benefits and all kinds of things. So I am more in favor of having a conversation like that, and try to see if we can actually accomplish something and accomplish our goal of trying to retain these officers so that we don't have to train them every 2-3 years, someone new. So that's my 2 cents, what it's worth.
Okay. Denise, anything you want to add? If you're here.
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. All right. So is that maybe, Kevin, what you suggested, talk to the union and come up with maybe, as we talked about, the DC plan with some type of tiered payments, and you could still discuss the DB or a hybrid too. And so maybe you have a little bit better direction so we don't have to spend a lot of extra dollars with the actuaries, but we could give them some specific directions on what plans to bring back to, obviously the union understands and agrees the town doesn't want to put ourselves in that position for the future, but we do certainly want to recognize their issues, and which it's a town issue. We don't want the turnover in our police department. That's never a good thing.
Absolutely.
All right. I got everybody, council members, you guys agree? Anything else you want to add?
I'm fine.
Man.
Yeah, anything that helps retain the police in town. Whatever we can do to try and work on that, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. So we can take that forward, Kevin and Arosh, Denise, and John from the union, and we'll see you back in another, whether it's not the next meeting, but however, take a little time and get the information and bring it back to us when you have something else that you guys are maybe getting close on, and you have some more discussion. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Agenda item 8 and the final one is a request from the Central Connecticut Health District to get reimbursed for some of the COVID-related expenses. So in December 2020, this is about 3 months ago, we received, so did all the other 169 towns, something called Corona Relief Funds from the state of Connecticut, and it was distributed based on a population formula. And local health districts were asked to work with the municipalities to get reimbursed for the expenses they incurred. So CCHD has reached out to all of their towns, and they are requesting 10% of that amount, and they have given some explanation as to what they spent on, and they're all related to COVID-19. And I spoke with other town managers, and they all on board with giving them 10%. This is the state money that we get, 154,817. 10% is 15,400. But the council needs to appropriate that money for us to pay Central Connecticut Health District, and then it needs to go to the Board of Finance for their approval as well.
Okay, thanks, Arosh. Any other comments from the council? If not, we'll go ahead and take a motion.
Muted, Brenda.
Mayor, I move to appropriate $15,400 from the state federal grants revenue account to the regional health services expenditure account to remit a portion of the coronavirus relief funds to the town received in December 2020 in accordance with the state of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management direction pending approval of the Board of Finance.
I second the motion.
Okay. Any other discussion or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we got town manager's report.
Yeah, that's me. I got a few items. So just a reminder, tomorrow, take a step back. All of you should have received the budget electronically, the town manager submission. Kevin has already mailed the hard copies to you. So if you don't have it now, you should have it in the next couple of days or so. So tomorrow, Kevin, myself, and the Board of Ed, Brian, Julia, they'll be presenting the budget to the Board of Finance for their consideration. So that's tomorrow, and we have asked all department heads to join in by video. And if you have the time, I would request that you also listen in. The links are all on the calendar. The Board of Finance have March 10th and March 17th blocked out as workshops for them to work on the budget submitted, and they'll come up with a budget that they would recommend to the town electors by March 30th. So we have a 30-day window to do that. So that's the budget. Per Joanne's request, I included with the material all conversations going back to 2008 about the leash law and dog park, so to say. So quite a few conversations there back and forth. I tried to just give you some of the action items that includes, what planning and zoning recommended about adding a parking lot at the end of the cul-de-sac, not to exceed the amount of cars that can be around the cul-de-sac, so it's not a bigger one. There were questions about, who controls open space, and I'm not going to go through the whole report. And then also, most of the conversations were around this. If you read through the minutes, I didn't include all of the minutes. They're pretty much like watching a rerun of a movie for the last 13 years. People who are in favor of keeping the status quo at Bicentennial wants the dog there. The Conservation Commission thinks it's for everyone else and it's not fair for the others. And the neighbors living there do not appreciate all the dogs and the traffic and the owners not picking up items. And so it's pretty much the same. And I think at some point, we have to decide what we want to do with this in terms of action. And I have noted on there's some open space recommendations, and even at that time, Bicentennial was one of the places they had recommended, but some had said, well, there are ATVs. I don't see any ATVs there, and safety concerns, but things have changed. There's parking there, as well as handicap accessibility. So I'm just leaving this with you for your consideration. At some point, we need to have an ordinance committee. Mr. Mayor had said we should probably wait till the snow melts so that people can go and look at the proposed leash-free area at the Bicentennial Park. And then I think there is general consensus that we need to have a leash law in town.
Yes.
And the disagreement appears to be about where the dogs can run on freely. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Putting that
Thanks for
together.
putting that together, Rosha. I appreciate
Yeah, sure.
it.
No problem. You're welcome. I want to talk to you about some conversations we have had with Eversource and some other companies that have approached us. This has to do with monies that are available with Eversource. All of us pay into this fund that we can tap into for certain energy saving initiatives. And this particular one that we are interested in pursuing, this is Doug, Kevin, and I, is to replace all light fixtures and controls in the high school, middle school, and perhaps in the town buildings using the Eversource money. This is what I call other people's money, OPM program, which is the best. And it is available, and it is foolish not to use it. And the ranges go from 45 to 75 cents a credit hour. So to give you a sense, this will be, we will certainly go through our open bid process and interview 2-3 other firms who are willing to work with us. And the way this works, we just did a calculation, I had conversation with Eversource as well. The maximum amount that they would give would be about up to $1 million, right? So our project will cost about $700,000-800,000. And the way it works, that we work with a contractor, energy company that will come and do all the work. They partner with Eversource and the town, and they get paid by the credits. So the models that we are seeing with Eversource as well, within 4 to 5 years, they will recover the cost, and then anything after that will be savings for us. So this is pretty much what I call one of those no-brainer projects that the town will not have to borrow any money to do this. The money will be fronted by these companies that are willing to work with us, and the credits will pay for it, and they will pay back themselves in 4 years or so. We have reached out to our bond counsel because even though this is not money that we will have to borrow, we need to have a bond ordinance in place, because regardless of whether we have savings or not, we have to pay the money back. So we'll have to have a bond ordinance in place before we move forward with the project. So what I would do next meeting, Kevin and I will bring you a bond ordinance. In the meantime, we plan to go out and put an RFP out and interview 3 or 4 firms and bring the best deal. The group that can give the best value for the town will recommend to you. So that is coming up. And I would also, I've been working with Mike Ahern on this. I think I mentioned this to you before about a project called Street Scan. It's a group that Connecticut Conference of Municipalities are recommending, and multiple other towns have worked with them. It's a way of going and mapping all your roads and sidewalks, doing a condition analysis using a GPS system. They drive around town, and it maps everything and plots it on a graph that says what's in the worst shape, what needs to be done next year in up to like 5 years or so. I like this process because it's not like what we had done in the past, where 2 guys drive around in the truck and figure out where the bad roads are and then color code it with crayons. I'm just being a little facetious here, but that's the approach we do. But this is a very scientific approach, and the money, whatever it costs, we can use the state money, town money to pay for it. And what I also like about that is we could have this on our website for the entire town, so that every year when people call and say, when are you doing my road? How come you're doing Mrs. Jones' road and not mine? We can tell them it's because this is the condition. There are, these roads will be done this year. These roads are in orange next year. The ones in green, we are not doing for the next 3 years. What I like to do is, with your permission, to bring this group and give you a 15-minute presentation on how it works. I think it's very fascinating, very interesting. It's worthwhile looking into it. And again, these are the type of things we ought to be doing so that we could, be a little bit more proactive and have a good way of planning for our future of road
Right.
work. All right. Finally, one more thing. I have been talking to a lot of groups about mobile technology for the town. Try to get a lot of these services that we provide, both information sending out as well as push notifications, and also customers looking inside the town to get information on a mobile device. It's a little bit of work involved with that. It's preliminary stages. It's a longer term project, but this goes hand in hand with what you mentioned the other day, Mr. Mayor, about our website as well. I've asked a lot of the departments to take a look at all the calls they get. A lot of the folks know what type of calls they get, and we're trying to map it out to say, okay, if you get the most number of calls for this reason in your department, your website should be able to get that information in 1 or 2 clicks. That's one. The second one we have done is, we have worked with the group that's doing the website and turned on what I call the Google Analytics. So it keeps track of everyone who comes into our website and what they're looking for. We're just getting started on it, but very soon we're going to have a whole database of items on what they're looking for, how much they spend on each website, and based on that, we can design the website that is more user-friendly or friendlier, as we put it that way. So,
Arosh, you said mobile. Are you talking about maybe looking at perhaps an app to build for something like that?
That's what it is. Yeah, it's mobile technology. It's like My Town of Berlin or something like that. You go in there, you pretty much have everything. Ideally, I want everything to be there, including paying your taxes, so that you could just go and click and pay your taxes rather than, I know people like to come and see the lovely people in the town hall, but I'm sure people like the convenience of just paying and getting a dog license. I'm making Kate nervous here when I talk about all these things. We are also going through the building permits are working now online, right? So similar to that, we want to try and just, part of improving customer services is to help customers help themselves. A lot of the younger people, most people, would rather have the information at their fingertips than trying to call and email people or visit the town hall. So that project is ongoing. I will stop there. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer any.
Thank you for that, Rocha. Thank you for bringing us forward technologically. We're very refreshing.
Oh, thank you. I'm trying.
Yeah, any fix to the website and beyond is great. Appreciate you working on that. I know that we've been talking about that for a while, so I'm glad you're moving that forward. Hey, one thing special committee reports are next. What the golf joint meeting? We already talked about that, right? Last time, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could give you a quick update.
Sure.
So I'm tentatively thinking of scheduling the other meeting next Thursday. I believe it's the 11th or so. It's a Thursday.
Okay.
And same time, 6 o'clock. But we had talked, I sent another reminder today to the group to send me pros and cons of, outsourcing so that we can put it on one sheet of paper, and also about the sale of Timberland. Kate and I have been looking at all the documents that we could find, including any deed restrictions, but we haven't been able to find anything about the sale, which allows or disallows, or any prohibitions. We are trying to get hold of looking, see the original grant documentation that might give us some direction, but we're still working on that. Brandon had sent to the group meaning the town council and the commission, I think it's called SECO, a group that would come in, would like to give us a presentation on how they would evaluate the golf program. And Brendan, if we can see if we can line them up for our next meeting, that'll be great. And
Okay, I'll
what
work
I'll
on that.
try to do is to, if you're going to do that, there are a couple of other groups that we might have to pay who are willing to do that as well. So this is food for thought. What I would, you had suggested, Mr. Mayor, to meet in person if possible for the next meeting. So
Yes.
even if we do, since this is a public meeting, we will still be required to provide a video access as well. So that might be a little complicated. I don't know, not complicated. So half the people will decide not to be there in person. So one option is, I was talking to Pete DeFascio to try and use Zoom for this meeting rather than the Teams that we used last time.
Okay.
He said for some reason his Zoom works better than that. So if you're open to that idea, even the presenters might be right now doing it remotely, so it might make better sense, at least for the next meeting, to try this Zoom application if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, sure. I think Zoom does seem to be, I don't know.
I'll try it.
Yeah, more reliable than some of the others. Yeah. Okay.
So that's all I have about the Golf Commission.
Okay, thanks. And that was the only real meeting we had, special meeting. Council communications, what do you all have? Anything?
I had a question actually about budget and stuff, because I know that in the town charter it says that we have to give our recommendations to the Board of Finance as to what we think as a town council, what the priorities are for the town as far as the budget's concerned. And obviously everybody wants to have another meeting, but I don't know if there's a way that maybe we can put our recommendations down and send them as one, or if there's something else we want to do to try and make sure that we put that together to give to the Board of Finance.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. I'm trying to remember, what did we do last year? I don't remember how
We had a meeting last year, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah, I think we did. You're right.
But it wasn't that long, so I don't know.
Mayor, may I comment?
Yes.
This is Kevin. I spoke with the chairman of the Board of Finance tonight specifically about this topic. He brought it up. He plans to solicit input from each one of you, that he would ask each council member to send comments, concerns, constructive feedback to him, and he would put it together so that the board would have your feedback available. He plans to address that tomorrow night, but since you had the question, he will be discussing that tomorrow night.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks. Anyone else? Just two quick things. That there was an article in the paper the other day about the mansion tax. Berlin was in that article. I tried to get to the reporter. He actually emailed me with some statistics on the homes and condos in Berlin. He did the article addressed the Hartford County and the 10 towns with the highest number of homes that met the proposed legislation. It's only proposed where there would be another tax on homes over 300,000 assessed value, market value around 430. In the article and in the email he sent to me, he had almost 2,900 pieces of property that met that criteria. Well, when Roche and I spoke, and we spoke to the tax assessor,
Sure.
it's actually 522 properties. So I don't know where he got the 2,900 properties. It's not correct according to our records, just so you know. But tried to correct that with him, but I assume he had already done the article. He didn't call me back, but just so you know, that's not correct. That was in the current, and I did leave that with him. So, and the other thing I just had, I'll update you. I mean, I don't know where it goes, but from our representative, John Larson, he did send he left me a phone message, and he sent a letter to us regarding the, I guess it's called the American Rescue Act, which is that latest COVID funding bill, right? HR 1319. I guess it, right, as we probably have read or heard, it passed the House, whether, you know, whatever our thoughts on it, they are. But if it does pass in its current form, which it's headed to the Senate, of course, these are estimates by the House committee, and it's not, you know, obviously not a guarantee, but in that bill, Berlin receives municipal aid of $2,017,705, and local education agency, I assume school system, I guess that's what they mean, $866,000 in that bill as it currently stands. Hartford County, and they broke it down, our state by county, different states depending upon their local government, but Hartford County would be slated for 173 million, 35 million in Litchfield, and 32 million to Middlesex, which are obviously in his area. So just for information, that's what's in that bill that's directly related to our state.
Yeah.
Berlin. Yeah.
I think we need to recognize too that the money will be restricted to COVID related uses. It's not
Correct.
anything that would offset the budget, but I mean that's pretty significant for Berlin. Over, you know, in excess of 2.8 mil. It's huge. 800,000 for the Board of Ed. It's great.
Yeah. So we'll see obviously how it all shakes out, if that's what it ultimately is, but that's what it says now. So just to update you on that. And that's all I have. Anything else? If not, we could move on to our acceptance of minutes. Take a motion.
Good. Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from February 16th, 2021.
Second. Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, so moved. We'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right, folks.
Thank you.
Everybody.
All right, be well.